What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Kevin Hoop Show. And we just ended UFC 284 less than 24 hours ago. And what an event it was, ladies and gentlemen. Islam Makhachev came out with the W and proved me wrong. He proved me wrong. Shout out to Blue Blink 2238 for telling me that I gotta do this apology. I am sorry for all you fans out there that said that, Islam was gonna win. You were right. I was wrong. I'll take that one on the shoulder. But do not forget, Alexander Volkanovski in that fight, he stood up, ladies and gentlemen. He stood the fuck up after getting taken down by one of the best grapplers the UFC has ever seen, quote unquote. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Islam Makhachev, but, I do think it was a little questionable on, whether you thought was going to win. I do think the argument for Islam winning is 100% there, but I do think that Alexander Volkanovski took a round or two, or maybe even three, and should have won. I think the argument is also there for that. Now, I'm not saying it was a robbery. I think Islam Makhachev definitely won. There's some other questionable fights that if you compare, maybe it should have went to Alex. But I think that Islam Makhachev proved himself today that he can go up against the baddest motherfuckers in the UFC and come out on top. He can use his strategy of taking people down and keeping them on the ground for the whole fight. And he showed that this fight. And honestly, hats off to him. Islam Makhachev is the baddest man on the world, or in the world, in the UFC roster, whatever you want to say. Islam Makhachev is that guy. Now, if we're talking a little bit about the fight, a thing that really impressed me is Islam Makhachev took Alexander Volkanovski down multiple times. And multiple times, Alexander Volkanovski stood up. He stood up and brought the fight to Islam Makhachev. I think Islam Makhachev was playing a little bit scared. I think he was letting Alexander Volkanovski come to him, which was very smart. I think Islam Makhachev had a really good game plan going into this and ended up actually kind of working good against Alexander Volkanovski's game plan, which was trying to get on the inside on the feet. And I think he landed a couple of good shots on the feet. But I think Islam Makhachev impressed him as well. Alexander Volkanovski said in the press conference and maybe in the post-fight interview that, yeah, he kind of underestimated Islam's striking and Islam underestimated Alexander Volkanovski's grappling. And I think that is 100% true. I think that Islam Makhachev had really good grappling and wanted to focus on his striking. So when he was focusing on his striking, he wasn't working on his grappling as much. I'm just saying, he still had it. He knew he was good. He wanted to better his striking going up against Volk. And honestly, in the first round, it looked like he was going to stand with him. I think he went for one or two takedown attempts in the first round, but honestly, it was pretty exciting to see him actually stand there with Volk and trade some shots. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. He talked the talk, and he walked the walk, and came out with the W and the pound-for-pound #1 in the UFC. So honestly, hats off to Islam Makhachev. He proved me wrong, and to all the Islam fans out there, once again, I apologize. I apologize for being a fan of Alexander Volkanovski. I thought, honestly, he could have pulled it off. And maybe it comes down to the first three rounds, and one of them, Alexander Volkanovski, could have tried a little bit harder. He could have had a little bit more output. I do think he was a little slow on the feet compared to those Max Holloway fights. But honestly, at the end of the day, we had an amazing fight. We had two guys in the best of being the best in their divisions, go at it head to head. They put everything out on the line last night, and it came out to be that Islam Makhachev was the better fighter. But it was so close of a fight. Going into that decision, I honestly was on the edge of my seat. This was one of the most exciting fights I've watched in a while. I was on the edge of my seat. I was getting hot. I took my shirt off, Go back and watch the watch party, ladies and gentlemen. It was fucking nuts. It was just an exciting fight in general. And to see the back and forth of Islam winning the 4th round, and then in the 5th round, Alexander Volkanovski comes out after half the round's done and completely overtakes the round. And honestly, if there was, 5 minutes more, if there was another round, I think Alexander Volkanovski could have possibly taken him out or just won another round, and, it would have been 3-3. But at the end of the day, you cannot take anything away from Islam Makhachev and his win last night. He had an absolutely stellar performance against a world-class grappler and striker in Alexander Volkanovski, and he showed that last night. He has world-class grappling. He took on one of the best grapplers in the entire world, coming from somewhere that has the best grappling and wrestling in the entire world. Everybody knows Russia, and Dagestan especially, has something different when it comes to grappling. And Alexander Volkanovski had an answer for that last night. Granted, in the 4th round, he couldn't really get out, but I think that that's just a thing that you have to go back to the drawing board and say, all right, we have to figure out how to get out of this rear naked with somebody having a body triangle around us. Which honestly is something really hard to get out of, and I think that if he kind of did something a little different in the beginning of that exchange, he could have gotten out, and in my opinion, arguably won 3 rounds and could have won the fight. Now, I'm not saying Volk should have won the fight. I'm not saying it was a robbery. I'm just saying it was that close. And the fact that it was that close, to me, shows that Islam Makhachev is not as good, or was not as good as people had thought he was. And in my opinion, I was saying it's going to be a close fight at least. At the least, it's going to be a close fight. And at the most, one of these guys might get caught at the end. I really didn't think this was going to be a 1st round, 2nd round KO. Maybe in the 3rd round something could have happened, but honestly, I really thought it was going to be a close fight, and that's what we fucking got. And that's what I'm trying to always get in all of these really exciting fights, because the closer the fight is, most likely the more entertaining it was. And that's just how I usually go off, kind of looking at fights and analyzing fights. How much were you really invested in it? How much were you on the edge of your seat when they were reading that decision? Did you really think it was going for the guy? How biased were you? And I will admit, I was biased towards Alexander Volkanovski. All of last week, all of the video before last week, I was definitely cheering for Volkanovski. I was more on that Volkanovski side. And, I'm still more of a fan of Volk than I am Islam. I just think that, I relate personally to Alexander Volkanovski more than I relate to Islam Makhachev. And there's nothing wrong with Islam Makhachev. I just relate to Alexander Volkanovski and respect him a lot. I respect Islam Makhachev just as much, maybe not as much, but very close, especially after winning a fight like that. His ground game and ground control is next level, and he's just very smart. Every Islam Makhachev, every fucking time Islam Makhachev brought Alexander Volkanovski to the ground, that motherfucker stood right back up. And that is exactly what I said he was going to do. I'm not saying that I predicted the fight right. But what I'm saying is I was on point with my prediction on how Alexander Volkanovski was going to be in this fight. I think that he proved himself a lot with his grappling, and I think that in general, he could have had a little bit more output. But it is what it is. Islam Makhachev is still the 155-pound champ. What is next for both of these fighters? I cannot wait. Do not forget, ladies and gentlemen, to hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you guys thought about UFC 284 in general, whether you wanted Islam to win or you wanted the Volk to win. In my opinion, it was a great fight, and I was just proud to be able to watch a fight go on like that with 2 world-class guys. Do not forget, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button as well, and I will see you tomorrow. Go Birds! Woo!